What's up? Andrew LaPrade here. Thank you guys for tuning in. This week I have Keelan Murphy. All right. Now I've been doing some things this week that is not going to be acceptable in her eyes. Like I had the giveaway for the $50 Buffalo Wild Wings gift card. I had a box of pizza last night, and I know she's going to kill me, but I'm bringing her on so she can inform you guys more not to do the things that I'm doing, so I can join her, okay? She's the CEO and founder of Eye Nourishment, and she's here to talk about nutrition as well as her fitness journey and different things of that nature. So Keelan, welcome. What's going on, Keelan?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm actually really glad you started it that way, because part of the premise of, my business is to get rid of the shame and the guilt that comes with eating. So if you had pizza this weekend, I'm very happy you had pizza, very happy you enjoyed it. And there's no shame involved. Part of what I want to do is get rid of the fear of the foods that we have today in our culture. So eat all the pizza. Well, not eat all the pizza you want, but eat pizza when you want pizza and when it's acceptable and accessible. So
yeah, that's really good, because honestly, I was definitely scrolling through your page, because that's me called studying. So when I was looking through your page and the recent stuff, I saw pizza and stuff like that, and I was just like, hey, I'm like, for somebody like me that's eating bad right now, which I need to start eating good. I was just like, I definitely got to get her to explain that. So do you deal with that drawback a lot with people saying, okay, you're a nutritionist, but sometimes you can eat pizza? I think that's the misconception. So what's kind of your thoughts on that?
yeah, it actually is kind of interesting, because whenever I tell someone I'm going to be a dietitian, the first thing they want to do is ask me, how should I eat? Give me a meal plan, or how do I lose weight? And that is one aspect of it for sure. But where I want to take it, and where a lot of other dietitians are taking it, is more of the intuitive route. So, and that's kind of like Third Eye kind of comes from. Third Eye is your intuitive guidance, right? So,
oh wow, that's cool.
and you even said bad foods, right? And so getting rid of the dichotomy between good and bad, and knowing that, food is fuel. So food can be a lot of things. And so one food is not necessarily bad, and one food is not necessarily good. There's no superfoods. There's no, you can't detox your body by drinking a tea, so getting rid of that that cultural mind frame, it's a big job, and I know a lot of other dietitians are doing a good job with that, but it's hard to rewire a whole culture.
For sure. And I'm going to say this, Keelan. So I know for sure we're going to unpack a lot of stuff, and please don't get upset with me if I ask you a lot of questions like that, because I don't think myself even had the education on that stuff, because it's like, you know the basic ways of eating right and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily know portion wise, what's different things that you can have. And like you said, it is a lot of misconceptions with those type of things. So how did you get into knowing the different foods to eat, and kind of, I guess, testing out certain diets per se?
Yeah, testing out diet, that's a good one, because part of the intuitive eating dietitian network, they're anti-diet. And I wouldn't say that I'm strictly anti-diet, because I think there is merit in trying things out for yourself, seeing what works for you, in a way that broadens your palate, broadens your menu selection, or your ability to make certain foods. So I'm not anti-diet in the absolute sense where all dieting is bad. I think there is some good to dieting, in the fact that you get to explore and get to see what you like, what you don't like, what works for you. How I got to it, I played sports my whole life. I was a competitive athlete, and I was big on the keto paleo diets, because just evolutionary wise, like that's what my focus was on. Like, how do we didn't have grains for this subset of years as a human species, and now all of a sudden we have it. And just through the fatigue and the mental exhaustion and the burnout, and the shame and the dissatisfaction with body image, like it was wearing me down more so than just eating bread, or just eating the pizza or the bad foods that we claim to be bad. And I was injured more, I was restricting myself more. And so I'd get injured. I couldn't recover as fast. couldn't perform my best. So I do have like a very strong interest in performance nutrition as well, and eating to, help you go, run faster, be more explosive, and maintain that level of physical activity. So yeah, that's how I got to it. And then, of course, little comments. I was getting fat, if you will. My dad, when I was young, you could, blamed my health, blamed my injuries on being a little bit overweight or being a little chunky. And it's so funny because it sticks with me. And my dad was actually like, "You still remember that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I remember that."
Yeah,
Like,
people definitely remember things like that, especially when you say you were younger when that happened, right? So yeah, by you being younger and that's happening, and like you carry those things to when you get older. So like, let's say if you slip up when you're older, that's the first memory that you have. And so subconsciously you're like, okay, I see myself doing the things that I was doing when I was younger, and now I'm doing it in my adult life. So like, I think that's kind of a dynamic right there that can happen sometimes.
right. And for sure. And that's part of what, you have to consider as a nutrition professional. Like, it's not just this is good, this is bad, but what are you eating now? Let's assess it there. What are your thoughts about food? How did you come to those thoughts about food? What type of environment did you grow up in? What was your parents' relationship with food? What was your accessibility to food? A lot of times, especially here in Arizona, the native populations, the only thing they have access to is Circle K or like a gas station convenience foods. And you have to keep that into consideration. You can't, and continuing to perpetuate the idea that this food's bad and this food's good. Now if you live in those rural environments or in an environment where, you don't have access to those foods, you don't have the money for organic, fresh, non-GMO foods, you're going to internally kind of shame yourself because it's not what the health industry purports as healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that alone, that, internalized guilt and shame, studies have shown is actually more haphazardous to your health than actually trying to attain those health goals.
So let's stay there for a second, Keelan, because you said some very interesting things I want to kind of tack on a little bit. So what's your take when it comes to, because like for instance, I know sometimes I'll go grocery shopping with like my mom or somebody, and I'll be like, "Hey, I want to go to Whole Foods or something like that," because I believe that they have the organic stuff that you're referencing, or the, like you said, the non-GMO. And so what's your take when it comes to the market and how the whole healthy fitness life, as far as with eating right, has been kind of brought to the masses? Like, do you think that there's a kind of a misconception with that, and they're not kind of marketing that the right way, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I have very and again, I'm always learning new things, and the health industry now does market and kind of profits off of your inability to discern what actually is healthy or not. So they'll put on a bag of tortilla chips, corn tortilla chips, gluten free. Well, corn by nature is already gluten free. So there's kind of like this weird marketing. I had a bag of vegetables I posted on my story the other day that says plant based. I'm like, it's a bag of vegetables. Of course it's plant based. Gluten free. Of course it's plants. Like, how does it have gluten in it? And I think the tactic, I get the intention, right? There are a lot of obese people in our nation, a lot of health disparities going on because of, our quote unquote inability to eat right. But the intent's there, it's good, but it's to profit at the end of the day. So the diet culture industry, if you take into account all the, Atkins diets, Weight Watchers, paleo keto, surgeries, gastric bypass surgeries, like it's over $72 billion and continuously rising.
Jesus Christ.
And despite that, we still have, a large population of obese individuals. And to me, obesity is not the problem. It's not an epidemic of obesity. It's an epidemic of dieting.
Okay.
Because it's the yo-yo, you get on this health kick and you're like, I'm going to lose this much weight. First and foremost, your motivation for losing weight is probably not really based in health. It's more based on aesthetics and your your appearance to the world, right? Like dissatisfaction with your body. So then
Mm-hmm.
you get on this kick, you feel good, you're like doing everything quote unquote right, and then you have this burnout. You start crashing because you're probably not getting enough calories.
Yeah.
And then you start to, backslide, if you will, have a cookie here. Okay, well, I already had one cookie. I might as well eat 4 more.
Yeah.
Because it's that restriction
For sure.
kind of phase we're in. And then once we get the food, once we have access to it, we tend to overindulge. And so kind of getting rid of like the dieting mentality. Well, again, I do think there's merit to dieting. You kind of experiment with it, see what's going on with yourself, how you react to the food. We kind of set ourselves up for this false sense of achievement. Like we're going to do all this, and then it doesn't work. And then we feel like, okay, well, something's wrong with me. I wasn't disciplined enough. I didn't have the motivation. I didn't do all the right things. It's the diet I was on. It's not me. I got to try something else. And we're kind of just going back and forth with these states of energy.
Yeah.
Like
It's like sticking to something that's not real in a sense. And my older brother, he's a fitness trainer. His name is Brandon. He used to tell me that a lot. He used to be like, hey, look, man, get you something that you can actually stick to and something that you'll enjoy, but remaining kind of, stern on yourself, but not killing yourself. And I just noticed that you kind of said that. So how much would you say, because what I gathered from that is basically it's almost like a mental thing, kind of understanding what you're actually doing. And actually that's very interesting because I never even heard it presented that way. That's why I'm glad that I have you on. And I'm assuming that you definitely implement that into Third Eye Nourishment. What would you say is the percent of mental versus actually what you're doing to basically, lose the weight or to get yourself even ready for a diet to obtain it?
I think for most people it is mental, and almost 100% so. And what I would kind of want to help people get through or help people understand or get to a point where it's not so mental, where it's more just, I'm just here, I'm hungry right now, I'm going to eat this and I'm going to move on with my day. And I'm going to get hungry again. So I'm going to eat again without worrying about what I'm eating, because there's so many things that are involved in how you come to the plate you're at. Do I have the money for it? Is it accessible? Is it easily made? Depending on what your circumstance is. People with 5 kids who take the bus home from work all day don't always have time to make a healthy meal, if you will. So they get McDonald's. And I just want to get rid of like you're a bad parent, or you're a bad, you're not health conscientious because you eat these foods. So making it less mental and more just natural. What's available, what's easy, what nourishes me, what satisfies me.
I guess what happens is people, and when I say people, I know for sure me definitely. That's why this interview is very refreshing. But it's like, okay, what's the right thing to eat? You know what I'm saying? Because it's almost like if somebody can push a magic button, Keelan, they will be like, hey, I think I could be okay if I was able to, do this or that. And they want to know, hey, what can I eat? Because like when you hear it, like for instance, like let's say vegetables or something, right? Somebody will probably say, if I go to Walmart, it's probably a lot of, preservatives in it, different this and this and that. And it's not necessarily the quote unquote, the healthiest vegetable to eat as opposed to another place. So as far as for your knowledge of what you have, what would you say would be the best way to go about maybe eating vegetables or, certain meats or different things like that?
Well, and that's in any type of like behavioral change strategy. And so, you can't just go from, and that's even starting a business too. I kind of apply it to the same. You can't just, have an idea and then the next day press a button and have a full running business. There's certain developmental steps involved, right? So if you want to, for instance, you've mentioned vegetables, you want to eat healthier. Blanket statement, you want to eat healthier. If you were my client, I'd sit you down, see what you're eating now. And instead of just completely like wiping the slate clean and like, this is what we're going to do, this is the meal plan I set up for you, I'm going to tweak what you have already. I'm going to say, okay, you have a smoothie every day, throw in some spinach. That's a vegetable, right? Like just little things that we can do every day. And the clients I have now, you know, they're not seeing drastic changes per se in their weight or their appearance, but they're seeing changes in the mental burden or the mental burnout of trying to attain these goals. And you know, they have someone with the knowledge to kind of guide them through it, but I'm not setting unrealistic goals. I'm not going from point A to point B so, you know, drastically. And that's kind of where diet culture does make its profit, is because it sells these false, like, okay, do this and easy money. If you don't have the discipline, if you don't have the mental capacity or the mental like motivation to do it, that's on you. It's not on the diet. It's not the diet's fault. And that's kind of like a twisted way to go about it. So, you know, let's start with your water. Let's see what we can do with water. If you're not in the gym every day, go for a walk. Absolutely. Let's see how much 30 minutes of a walk can do for you, you know?
And it's crazy that you said that, because it's like, it's so much out there to kind of obtain. I mean, yeah, to obtain. And it's just like, okay, hey, like even with water, like you just said, right? You know, my mom is real big on this. She'll be like, hey, why do you want to get that water when it costs this? And it's the same thing. And it's just like, it's even a misconception with water, you know? And like, because what's the water that I've been getting? If I say it wrong, correct me. But I think it's Essentia or something like that. You've heard of, or something?
Oh, yeah. It's like the alkalized water or something.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like that's the only water I need to drink. Like if I see Dasani, you can forget it. If I see spring water, you can forget it. So like, what's your take when it comes to, you know, you're seeing people like that, and it's almost like you probably have to re-educate, because I'm sure like with some of your clients, you know, they kind of have those thoughts already, like, hey, what should I be buying? What should I be drinking as opposed to this and this?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the water, you know, not everyone can afford the higher priced waters. And in some areas, water is hard to get. So I kind of try to look at it realistically. Like at the end of the day, in the long span of your life, you got all these years to live, all these other things to worry about. The last thing you want to worry about is what freaking water you're drinking. Like, just drink some water. And I will say that I prefer, you know, I personally prefer like spring water just because of the mineral content of it. But what water tastes good to you? What water do you feasibly see being able to drink and enjoy and, you know, get some hydration out of? Some people don't like water at all. So how else can we get some fluid, right? So can we add some?
So I think what I'm gathering from you, and I love this aspect and this whole perspective that you have on it, because it's almost like giving it to you raw. Like, hey, look, you wanna lose weight, right? You wanna do this. Okay, let's get to the true extractants of what you're trying to get to. Is it something as far as your look? Obviously that's what you're looking for aesthetically, right? And then if it's this that you want to do, let's change the things that you're already doing and kind of make it better. That's very interesting, because I've never seen someone take a spin on it like that, because they're always saying, like you said, they're trying to sell you something like, hey, you can get 5-minute abs by doing this, or you can get this and that. So how much, as far as the ratio of what's watered down out there in the market to this right here, how do you feel like you're able to show the better sides of it as far as through Third Eye Nourishment?
And I wouldn't even say that I'm trying to show the better side of things, because
or the truth matter, if that
right. Well, and the truth is, nutrition is nuanced. Nutrition is individualized. Health is individualized. And in the healthcare industry, you know, we use BMI to monitor and assess your level of health, amongst other metrics. But what I want to do is just kind of like get rid of the confusion. So, you know, like you said, with the water, what water do I need to do? Well, what water do I need to drink for optimal health? What's the best water? You know, in the grocery store, well, this isn't GMO, this isn't organic, so it's not healthy. And while you're doing that, you're just making it harder for yourself to actually just enjoy food, because we forget that food is so enjoyable. And it's so good. I hate when people like don't like food, or, you know, are fearful of it, or they don't go out, or they don't go to a party because they fear that they're going to lose control around food and not be able to, sustain or, keep away from the treats and the goodies. And that comes from, your level of self-efficacy, your level of belief in yourself to maintain yourself. So what are small steps we can take to develop that level of self-efficacy and that sense of trust within ourselves to make our own decisions? So there, again, to answer your question, there's so much out there with nutrition. You can take so many different perspectives on it, so many different takes. My aunt did this diet, my cousin did this diet, and it worked for them. And that's great. That worked for them. Will it work for you? Let's sit down and talk about it if you want to try it. Like, will it work for you? What are you doing now? Can you make that jump feasibly? Can you maintain it? Will it sustain you for long periods of time?
Have you tried any of the, I guess, quote unquote, fad diets?
Yes. So like I said, in high school and a little bit into my college athletic career, I, again, was big on like keto and eating things that were, in line with our evolution and per se. And I tell you what, I may have felt good at first, but I didn't feel good after a while. I got constipated. Like, maybe that's TMI. Dietitians talk a lot about feces, by the way.
No, hey, we need to hear it because this is a very informative interview, and I want all the viewers, all the listeners to definitely hear this. This is good. So continue. I love it.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. It feels good for a couple months, but I question whether it's actually the food or the diet versus the kind of that like heightened sense of motivation or like, that frequency you kind of live off of to maintain those habits, right? Is it really the diet, or is it you're already on a mission, you're already pursuing something, and that alone kind of amps up your serotonin levels and your dopamine levels and makes you feel good on a biochemical level.
Yeah.
Just thinking that you're going to pursue something like that. And then of course you get to that point where you're tired or you slip up, and then once you slip up, it's over with. I ruined it, which is a horrible notion to go off of. But then that heightened level of happiness kind of comes down here.
Yeah.
And it's again, it's just trying to maintain it. And those diets aren't feasible. They aren't maintainable. It's too hard.
So let me ask you this. It's so crazy once again, because I really feel like I feel like I'm asking the questions for myself because these are things that I'm experiencing. So that's why it's crazy to me. But let me ask you this, Keelan. So let's say, how would you kind of get get your clients' morale up? Let's say if they say, okay, hey, I ate healthy this morning, but this afternoon I kind of had that plate. I kind of did something that was kind of off course. What's your how do you kind of help them get through that, to be like, hey, it's all right, it's it'll get better?
Well, I would first ask like what they ate, for one.
Okay.
And what specifically about the food that they ate or the portion size that they ate made them feel, and why it made them feel like they slipped up. So then, they tell me, well, I was trying to do this today, and then that plate just looks so good, and blah, blah, blah. And, for one, I wouldn't shame them, because I'm glad that they ate. I'd rather you eat something quote unquote bad than nothing at all, for one. So, instead asking them, well, how did that food make you feel after? If it made them feel bad, then like that's something to note and keep track of. Like, okay, that made you feel groggy, it made you feel cloudy, made your stomach hurt. So make that notable. And then, okay, well, how do you think this food is going to nourish you? What have you done today? Like, have you, did you, walk the dog? Did you chat on the phone with a friend? Did you go to the gym? What did you do today? And so how did that food, even though, you feel guilty about it, let's refocus our attention here on how it's helped you live today, how it's helped you breathe today.
So within that, okay, because what I believe in, and you can definitely educate me on this, but I do believe food provides a certain energy, like that you can feel the difference in when you, let's say, eat something like a salad that's relatively healthy versus if you eat a box of pizza or something like that. You can actually feel it when you take a nap early or something like that or anything like that. So when you said you would ask the client, what does it do for you or how are you feeling? So I'm assuming that when they tell you those answers, if it is something bad, you're kind of trying to lead them to a way of like, okay, maybe this is how you should have probably did this as opposed to what you did. I'm trying to grasp what you were saying is basically what I'm
More
asking.
so like in a sense of like cultivating gratitude and appreciation
Okay.
instead of looking at like and this is why I loved Sunny Side Up podcast, because again, looking at things with a more positive mindset instead of like, oh, well, I ate that's bad. It made me feel this way. It made me feel like crapola. Well, did you enjoy it? Did it taste good? What did it taste like? Start getting them to talk about, how good it was. It was so good. It had the pepperoni just crispy, just like I liked. My friends were there, my family was there. We had good conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the other beauty of food that we forget. Food isn't just here to, well, it's here to keep us alive. It's fundamental is breathing.
Yeah.
But there's also so many other areas that food kind of dissects into or intersects into. And, some people eat to, mask their emotions. Okay, be aware of what emotion came up. Why are you feeling this way? You went to food. That's okay. Food can do that sometimes. Food can make you feel good sometimes and kind of distract. If it becomes a habit and that's your only way of dealing with your emotions, then we need someone else, not me, to address some other underlying issue you got there, right? And that's
Absolutely.
kind of where like yoga and like mindfulness comes in too.
Okay. So let's tap into two things that I want to tap into because I've seen both of these on your pages. All right. So I see that you travel a lot. So my first question is, how do you handle your staying on your path with traveling? Because you've been to some amazing places. I've been seeing some nice pictures and videos. So how does Keelan handle traveling and eating the right thing and staying on your path?
That's so funny you brought that up because I just got back from the Grand Canyon. My dad got a camper, and so we went up north,
Okay.
stayed in Sedona for a couple nights. To me, traveling, I want to experience all the food that I can get. So, or whatever, not all that I can get, but I want to experience the culture there or the selection of food there. I think of it as an experience, part of the experience.
Okay.
So I do really feel bad for people who have like a very narrow palate for food and
Okay, so let me ask you this then, because that probably might not have been a great question.
no, it was a really good question. It was a really good
Do
question.
you have a balance to it then? Like as far as like, let's say if you're there for 4 days, maybe two of them you're eating like this, or maybe, you know what I'm saying? So how do you kind of create that balance though?
Okay. So for instance, today we had pizza last night and in the camper we had our leftover pizza in the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
Getting up this morning, I really value breakfast, getting something in first thing in the day. That is one of my like core like things, get breakfast in regardless of how you're feeling. And all I had was pizza. So I had pizza for breakfast. And someone else or someone would probably see that and be like, what? You're a nutritionist, you're a dietitian and you're eating pizza for breakfast? Well, yeah, that was available for me. And so there is, yes, a balance, I guess you could say. But the balance comes from my intuition,
Mm-hmm.
not from the rigid rules I set upon myself. And
Yeah.
so that's the thing. I know when I'm hungry. I've developed a very, keen mind-body connection where my hunger cues, I honor them, I respect them, I give in to them. I wouldn't even say give in, but I just nourish myself when I'm hungry. When I'm not hungry, and let's say it's a social setting, sometimes there's food there, I'm very aware that, okay, I might just be grazing here, and that's okay, move on.
Yeah.
But there's not really like rules that I go by. There are tactics that I could, so if you're my client and you just don't have that mind-body connection and you're still stuck on your rigid rules, one thing for sure, certain, I don't want your trip to be ruined, or I don't want it to be just overwhelmed with what you're going to eat or how it's going to like interfere or disrupt your progress or your health pursuits, right?
Yeah, because I think too with that, I think that as far and I commend you because nutritionists, fitness trainers, and different things like that. When you have clients and you have people that are watching you in the public all the time like that, like you guys experience, um, and of course you can't tell your clients like, hey, look, I've kind of been doing this for some years now, so I kind of already look like this, and I know that
Yeah.
if I go eat me a slice of pizza tomorrow, I'm gonna be okay because when you ate that pizza, you probably wouldn't go work out like an hour after versus someone else that'll eat the pizza. They probably won't go do that working out. So how much of it of the time are you kind of real with your clients and saying, hey, look, you got to kind of build up to certain things to be able to manage a certain way?
And that is kind of like one of those things where that threshold is always developing within myself, or that knowledge is always building. So, I can't just say, hey, to someone with not necessarily an eating disorder, but someone with disordered eating habits, like,
Mm,
okay, I ate this pizza, now I got to go work out. Or, I can't eat that, or I can't eat right now because I have a big dinner tomorrow night. You kind of have to meet them where they're at. So meeting my clients where they're at, what are their opinions on food? Where are they at mentally when it comes to food? And then just walking it through them. So you felt this way, why? You felt you had to work out, why? Um, and then say, well, how did that impact your trip? How did that interfere with your emotional availability to the people around you? And then reframing it like, okay, you have family, they love you.
mm-hmm,
You love people. What about their physical appearance and how much fat they carry around their torso
mm-hmm,
impacts your ability to love them?
mm.
It doesn't.
That's very deep. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
doesn't.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it impacts our ability to love ourselves. So then it comes into, okay, well, how do we develop this sense of self-love? How do we step away from these aesthetic goals and focus on more becoming more in love with yourself, more accepting of yourself? And that comes with compassion, empathy, non-judgment. And when you're doing that with yourself, you do it to other people too. So a
Let, let
lot
me
of
let me let me ask you this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
okay.
Because I really wanted to slide this in there because that was a very great segue to this. Um, how much of that would you say is excuse and actually, like you said, actually, you know, really accepting where you are now? And the reason why I ask that is because, like for instance, you'll have a person that used to be a certain way as far as aesthetically looking, and now they done kind of got bigger, they didn't gain weight and stuff like that, and they kind of want to get back to that, and then they'll tell somebody, hey, look, I'm happy with how I am, and it's like they never get back to that, even though, because I mean, let's just be real, we all want it, we all want to look and feel good, right? So how much would you say some of that is excuse versus like, you actually are happy with where you're at right
I actually get into this kind of
now?
not argument, but a debate about this a lot. And it and
Mm,
it definitely depends on your goals. So like if
okay.
you're a professional athlete, you're gonna have different health goals, different pursuits, and a different outlook on how you attain them. Um, and it's so funny because like that's just an excuse. That's just like the soft way of going about it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not, I don't know. It could be an excuse if you're hard on yourself that way.
Mm,
But you know, I don't know. It depends on your goals, I would say. So it depends on what you're trying to do. And the fitness trainer or like the health guru that's just like, no excuses, keep going. That might work for some people.
yeah.
So again, meeting the client where they're at, it doesn't work for a lot of people. And for most people, it doesn't. In fact, there's a big study that did a 6-year longitudinal analysis of chronic dieters. And
Mm,
at the end of 6 years, the people who had lost weight actually gained it back. And
mm,
only diets really only work for 5% of the people. That hard mentality of like, no excuses, it's all or nothing kind of mentality doesn't work. It's also not feasible in most people's daily lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is crazy right there. So let's unpack because basically all that we were talking about has been very informative, and I want to make sure that I definitely get the viewers and the listeners to understand your whole take on this, even though you've been explaining it throughout the entire interview. Third eye nourishment. Let's get into third eye nourishment. Where it came from, how it started, what you're trying to do with it. Like let's just like truly unpack that. I think we got glimpses of it, but I want to dive deep into that. So let's get into third eye nourishment.
Well, I got into nutrition first and foremost to know how to nourish myself. So
Okay.
there was some, selfish reasons for it. And again, a lot of what I knew, a lot of the biases I had going into my education were dismantled. So I have a completely different view on it now. And I did it because I wanted to help people. I was always kind of like, just aesthetically, people would come to me like, hey, like, how do you eat to get this body? Or how do you eat to be this fit or this mentally positive all the time, And so I was always that person that people would go to regardless before I was even educated in the matter.
Mm-hmm.
And going in through my education, we were learned how to do medical nutrition therapy. So how to feed someone with, who going through radiation in the hospital, someone who had a liver transplant, someone with kidney disease. So that was the basis of our education. And so I was always under the impression, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work in the hospital. I'm going to help people, on respiratory failure, whatever it was. There is value in nutrition in healing those, emergency situations. But then we also had like the counseling aspect and, motivational interviewing. That kind of was part of the education as well. And at first I was like, I'm not doing counseling. Like, it's so nuanced. I didn't want to tackle something that wasn't, 1 + 1 = 2. It's like, well, 1 divided by 2 is a half. And it's harder to wrap your mind around, and it is very individualized.
Absolutely.
And tackling, people with such rigid diet culture mentality is frustrating. Mm-hmm. So, but I realized I was good at it because I could dissociate myself from, what they were going through and kind of take like a bird's eye view of everything that they were going through. And I found out that I was actually pretty good at talking to people about nutrition and, not necessarily changing their mind, but planting the seed. Mm-hmm. And that just made me feel good to see people kind of start changing their perspective on nutrition from the black and white framework that we kind of have going on right now. So that's how I got into it. But then I started I'm practicing yoga for like 5 or 6 years now. And when I became an instructor, learning more about the principles of it, I did a mindfulness course in grad school as well that helped me deal with, my own like past traumas or whatever it is you're dealing with, whatever's holding you back, fear of this, attachment to this, codependency, kind of that kind of stuff. I have an amateur interest in psychology and philosophy. And so approaching both of those, not necessarily in a comprehensive way, but in a way that will always be nuanced just by the nature of it, but just helping people see that there isn't this black and white framework. There isn't one diet plan. You can't eat like me and just my body, right? There's a genetic component to it. There's a lot of, your attachments to your old notions and your family's notions and expectations that you're battling as well. So breaking it down first and foremost.
It's so refreshing that you have all those things to third eye nourishment, as far as those principles that you implement, as far as the actual structural base to third eye nourishment. Because it's like a lot of people just think, Keelan, like, hey, I can just go out here and start doing some jumping jacks and I could be all right with exercise. Or if I pick up this salad right here and I'll be okay within a month or two if I stop eating. And it's just like, that's not real. I mean, it might be some building blocks to it, but it's just like, so I said that to say, because I really wanted to praise you up on that, because I've never seen someone attack a diet that way, that the way that you said it, and really get into that. And so was that your initial way of third eye nourishment as far as attacking those particular areas, or did it kind of develop over time your true vision to third eye nourishment? What was that like for you?
So I would say my vision is always kind of evolving with, as I learn and go through this internship. The idea started last summer during the initial quarantine. It's when I got my yoga teacher certification. So I was like, okay, well, let's just start a business. Let's see what it does. Let's see where it goes. Kind of more of like a hobby, but it's starting to actually pick up. So I'm like, okay, let's just keep doing it.
Absolutely.
So I guess the framework, and that is what's kind of hard in getting clientele and marketing for clientele, because people really want that safety of like, I will guarantee these results. They gravitate towards that, and
Yeah.
ethically and internally, I just can't promise that. Because it's, I don't know how your genome is. I don't know what your metabolic rate is like. Your metabolism is vastly different from mine. And it's also trying to break through these cultural frameworks and lens that we grew up in, hearing your auntie talking about their new diet and, oh, I lost 10 pounds, and being like there's a appraisal with weight loss, and, by all means, if it makes you feel good and if it helps you feel better about yourself, then good, that's good. But most of the time people gain that back.
Yeah.
Plus some. So, and coming from Alabama too, actually, it's really interesting, the different cultural, systems in place from different states, because, the food groups are kind of different. The diets are different. And I'm from Arizona. It seems like everybody is just fit and tan and happy, and
Yeah.
very different.
It's okay. You could just say, hey, we're the South. We like to eat, So like I get what you're saying, like as far as getting to the true notion of it, but trying to break through a legacy of like, hey, we like to put extra seasoning on this. We like to do this and this. So how do you deal with like I guess kind of overcoming those objections when it comes to a traditional way of how things are already done and what they're used to already? How do you kind of overcome those objections?
Well, first, you just got to know what their objections are. Not everyone has the same objections. So, dissecting those, figuring out what those are, figuring out where they come from. And a lot of times I'm not even talking about diet. I'm talking about family and how they grew up and what their relationship with food in the family was about. And that does provide a lot of insight on the habits and the behaviors that they develop. So then it's taking those habits that they develop because of these preconceived notions, and then tweaking the habits. And the whole 21 days to build a habit jargon, not true. In my experience of it, and not setting up this great expectation, because you could think highly of yourself and know that your mental capacity, I can do whatever I put my mind to. Yes, you can. That's great. But how long can you do it for? So setting up the framework. So a lot of my clients right now is just, well, let's see if you can get water in every day. Let's see if you can stay true to your water goal. Let's see if you can get breakfast every day. Yeah. And then if you do have snacks, or let's see, I really like to assess their hunger cues, where their hunger is at when they do finally eat. A lot of times they're starving by the time they eat, and then they overeat. So, okay, well, how can we implement a snack right here? And how can that snack be beneficial, be helpful? So not just an apple, but maybe an apple and peanut butter. Because then there is the science of nutrition too. So, health is not just calories in, calories out. It's the combination of food. So, you can eat pasta and get a lot of carbs, but it's that salad kind of beforehand that kind of helps digest it, kind of get things moving a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And the acetic acid in the salad dressing will help slow the absorption of carbs. So you don't get those glucose spikes that are what actually causes cardiovascular disease and other adverse health conditions. So it is more of like a preventative measure, preventative nutrition, mindful nutrition, very, and I'm not a psychologist, but I just have a very interest in it, or a very keen interest in it and the mechanisms of it. So rewiring your biochemistry in the brain, your networks in the brain, to get rid of that reward punishment mindset, right? So when you had your pizza last night, how did you feel?
Oh my gosh, she's self-analyzing me right now. How did I feel? You know what? I'm gonna be straight honest with you, because I feel like I don't want to do a discredit to my viewers and listeners, but I felt good while I was eating it, but afterwards I felt horrible. I was just like, why did I eat this? And it didn't do the best for me as far as energy wise, and this is very refreshing, because I never actually had nobody ask me how I felt from eating something. So like that's exactly how I felt. Like I felt, why did I eat this pizza at the end of it? You know what I'm saying? But at the beginning, I was definitely enjoying it. Like it was a meat lover's pizza, and I was enjoying the pizza. Yeah.
And did you attribute the low energy and like the fatigue afterwards to the actual pizza, or maybe the portion size of the pizza?
Okay, I did eat a whole box. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be honest, Keelan. I did eat a whole box. You got me. But so
Is this nervous laughter? What is this?
it's a little bit of both, because it's like okay, now I get exactly what you're saying now, and how you show it to your clients, because you're like, okay, hey, look, it was nothing wrong with eating that pizza, but it was wrong with how much of the pizza you ate. That was I think that's kind of what you were getting at a little bit,
And not necessarily like, wrong, but just I want the client, like, asking the right question, so it's not me telling them this and that, but it's like you kind of discovering, like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't pizza, but maybe it was, I had too much. Okay, then why did you have too much?
Yeah. Now that part I don't know. Like it's just I was like, okay, hey, I paid for this pizza. I'm not trying to waste my money. so I was like, I gotta eat this pizza. That's great stuff, guys. She is amazing. You are amazing, because like I've never seen people like really show that aspect to a diet, or what you should be doing. And I'm glad that you're truly implementing all these things into Third Eye Nourishment. So since we kind of talked about that, let's this part right here is where I'm kind of segue a little bit. Let's hop into some what I like to call sunny fire questions. Okay. So this is just kind of where I just throw random questions at you. A few of the questions are questions that I kind of ask on the pod all the time, but I'm very curious to hear different people's experience, and especially yours. Okay. So let's do what's the strangest thing that Keelan has ever eaten?
Eating a lot of strange. The worst strange thing that I've eaten was liver. I tried to make some liver, and it's just not good. Like, point blank period, it's just not good. But I've eaten a lot of strange things, from, escargot, snails, octopus. I had an octopus, that leg tentacle that was literally like this long and like this down, like
that's crazy. That's crazy. So how was that octopus? Because I mean, I think I've eaten squid before, maybe, or maybe a little bit of octopus, but I never eaten like a entire like one like that. It was like maybe...
Well, I didn't eat the whole thing, but it was scared. But it was good. I liked it. I don't really dislike a lot of food, so yeah, I'm all about trying new foods. I've never been asked that. What's the strangest thing I've ever eaten? It's all about perspective, and it's very subjective too.
Yeah.
Some people think, okay, here's what I hear is strange. And I got this going to church when I was younger. We'd have lemonade and graham crackers. And it was like my Oreos and milk. Like, I would dip the graham crackers in the lemonade and then eat it. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, I will never try that. But it is so good. It's kind of my little like comfort food. It reminds me of being a kid.
I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it. I
Okay,
mean,
thank
that
you.
is kind of strange, but I'm gonna give you the benefit of trying it because my wife one time she made a ham sandwich, like kind of like how you make a grilled cheese sandwich, and she put jelly in the inside of it, and I was just like, "Yo, this is about to be terrible. This is about to be nasty," and it was like the best thing ever. Like I tell people all the time now, when you make a ham cheese sandwich and you
Oh,
put
yeah.
it on the stove and grill it, put a little bit of jelly in there. I promise you, it's good. So I'm not knocking it. I'm gonna. You said a graham cracker and lemonade, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm definitely, I'm definitely gonna try that.
No,
Okay.
and it won't give you any health benefits whatsoever. It's just a snack. It's just something to try and
Something
experiment.
to try. All right, so let me ask you this real quick as we kind of wind down. Hero or villain? Do you see yourself as the hero or the villain, and explain why?
I naturally want to go against the grain and go villain, but I can't.
Okay. Okay.
I'm like that person that kind of wants the villain in the movie to win. You know, like I hate when movies end and it's just always on a happy note. Like that's not realistic. Like, come on now, the villain wins sometimes, okay?
Yeah.
But I guess in my own story, of course, you want to be the hero. So or save the day.
Okay. Okay. Well, we definitely had a great time as far as we're talking about everything. You were very informative in this interview. It was very refreshing. A lot of it was dealing with me, so I'm sorry if I kind of hogged it up as far as certain questions that I asked, because I know for me, like I experienced all those things that you were saying and still experiencing.
You're not alone. You're not alone. So
And I
good.
definitely want to say that you gave me a sense of clarity on a lot of these things because, you know, like I said, I never, you know, seen it that way, the way you presented it. So that is amazing. And I'm going to make sure that I tell people about you. I mean, I've been doing it all week, but I'm going to make sure I continue to do that. Tell everybody where they can find you, what you got upcoming maybe, and all of that. And we're going to kind of wrap up. So where can they find you? Plug it all the way in.
All right. So you can find me at Third Eye Nourishment on Instagram or Third Eye Nourish on Twitter, most on Instagram, Twitter sometimes. And you can also find me Keelin Crazy with the K on Instagram as well. So I kind of go back and forth on both platforms. My website is up and coming. We're not there yet, but it's coming. And upcoming stuff, I just kind of ended my founder clients deal here, but I'm open up to new clients. So you can sign up for a 3-month nutrition counseling 101 that includes your initial assessment and then bi-weekly counseling sessions. Again, we could talk about goals, and you know, you get goal reminders. You can talk with me directly through the app, show me what you're eating, sync it up to your Fitbit, all that jazz. And if you use the code SUNNYKEY, you can get 20% off on all that stuff. And it's already super discounted because I'm not actually a dietitian yet. This is all just experimental for me. So you're already getting a good deal already, but use the code SUNNYKEY for additional 20% off.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to make sure I plug all that in along with how they can find you and everything else. Keelan, thank you so much. You were very, very helpful today. I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. Like I said, it's very refreshing to see a whole different side of it, and you definitely did that. Best successes to Third Eye Nourishment. I know that it's going to be successful. It's successful now, but it's going to be even more successful. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm definitely going to see you around, and we're going to chop it up some more when your website comes out.
All right. Thanks for having me, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. Thank